Welcome to the Chapter 6 online lecture for intervals from the Musician's Guide to Theory and Analysis. In this chapter, we are going to learn about intervals. This is where you combine pitches to create jumps and skips, and how we talk about harmony as well. So you combine pitch. We're going to talk about combining pitches, interval quality, spelling intervals, and consonant and dissonant intervals. So listen to example 6.1. Pause the video now and listen to that example. So as you're listening to this, I hope you heard the treble clef melody. If you look at the melody in your book, it shows you a bunch of pitches, and there's bracketed intervals that you see. There are some that are labeled with H and W and H, which is intervals of a second, and then there are intervals of an ascending third, ascending fifth, a descending seventh, a descending eighth or octave, and also the half steps that are in there. We call these intervals, and an interval measures the musical space between two pitches. They are identified by their size and quality. So usually 1 through 8, and then major and minor. When naming intervals, always count the first and the last letter names. For example, an A up to a D is a fourth. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a fourth. And that applies to any A through D interval no matter the accidental. Similarly, A down to D is a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If any two parts play the exact same pitch, and the interval that spans no actual space is called a unison. Intervals between successive pitches, like in 6.1, are called melodic intervals. So these are melodic intervals because they go between two pitches. They don't play or sound at the same time. If you look at measure 61 in example 6.1, you can see that two pitches are sounding at the same time. These are called harmonic intervals. Harmonic intervals are named in the same way as melodic. You find them out in the same way, or name them in the same way as you would a melodic interval, by counting the letter name that encompasses the interval. For example, in measure 61, it's a G to a B. So if you go G, A, B, that's 1, 2, 3. So that's an harmonic interval of a third. So melodic intervals are formed between two successive pitches in a melodic line. Harmonic intervals are formed between two pitches sounding at the same time. So here we have melodic intervals. You can see them both in the treble and bass staff. And as you can see, these are unison, and we have second interval, third, fourth, and so on. So if we count the letter names, let's go to the fifth one. So we have E is 1, F is 2, G is 3, A is 4, B is 5. Okay, so as you can see, if you count the letter names, you get that interval, and it applies to as well the bass clef. Here we have harmonic intervals. Again, when you play or sound the same note at the same time, we have a unison. Okay, and also down here we have what we call an octave. When you play the same pitch, either above or below it, that is called an octave. So let's look at our sixth. Let's pretend counting here. So we have A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4, E is 5, F is 6. So if you see here, sometimes in music they have two parts sounding at the same time. and you use stems to show the unison. And here is a second as well. So here is a key concept. Learn these visual landmarks to identify interval sizes quickly. Okay, thirds, fifths, and sevenths always have both pitches on line or spaces. For thirds, the lines or spaces are adjacent. For fifths, skip one line or space. For sevenths, skip two spaces or lines. And seconds, fourths, sixths, and octaves always have one pitch on a line and one on a space. All right, go on and complete try it number 1 and try to write the intervals as fast as possible. When you are finished, go on for the answers. As you can see here, I listed all the correct intervals. So we have melodic intervals here, and we have harmonic intervals there. And if you have any questions about these, please come talk to me. I want to help you as much as possible. All right, now we're going to look at example 6.2. If you are looking at example 6.2, you see there we have things called simple intervals. Okay, simple intervals are intervals that are an octave or smaller in size, or smaller. Okay. If you look at measure 62 in example 6.1, the first interval in the treble clef, A4 to B5, actually spans an octave plus a second. This is referred to as a ninth because it spans 9 letter names, and we call these compound intervals because they are intervals larger than an octave, and most common are ninths, tenths, elevenths, and twelfths, which correspond to an octave plus a second, third, fourth, and fifth. And you see that a lot in music. To make it easy, just add 7 to the simple interval. And note, most melodies feature intervals smaller than an octave because it's hard for especially singers and players to play and sing intervals bigger than an octave. Let's look at this one right here. So this is a tenth. So if you look at its octave, it's between a D and pitch letter D. Okay, that's its octave. And then if you look here, it's on an F. So if you go from this one to this one, it's 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have a tenth there. Okay. Go on to the try it 2 and you're gonna have to look at example 6.4 and write the interval size for either the compound or simple interval. If it's compound, write the simple interval equivalent in the parentheses. All right, so you had to look at this to complete the simple and compound intervals. So number 1, as you can see, is a seventh. If you count up from D to C, that's a seventh. The next one is a 13th, or a simple interval of a sixth. Okay, so between a G and a G sharp is an octave, or 8. Number 4 here, we have a 13th, or a sixth simple interval. Okay, number 5 right here. This is the same note, so from a G to a B natural is a 13th as well. Simple interval of a sixth. Okay. We also have number 6, which is a 12th, so from here to here is a 12th, or a simple interval of a fifth. Number 7, this is an octave, or 8. Number 8 is a ninth from E flat to D. So simple interval of a second. Ninth is a 10. This is a tenth with a simple interval of a third. And number 10 is also a tenth, simple interval of a third. Again, if you have questions on this, make sure you see me as soon as you can. All right, listen to both examples of 6.5 and pause the video and then come back when we'll talk about it. So if you listen to 6.5 A and B, the thirds from this melody are isolated in part B. If you located them on a keyboard and count the half steps, you'll find out that some of the thirds span 3 half steps, and some of them span 4 half steps. So those number of half steps determine the interval's quality. As you can see down here, here's a major third, minor third. So an interval size indicates how large it is, but its quality provides a more precise description of the interval. Okay, so if you look down at the key concept here, when two intervals share the same interval size but not the same number of half steps, they differ in quality. To find the quality of small intervals, count half steps. Minor intervals are a half step smaller than major intervals. So a minor second is 1 half step, a major second is 2 half steps, a minor third is 3 half steps, a major third is 4 half steps. In major and minor scales, scale degrees 1 and 4 and 1 and 5 and 1 and 1 octave unison, 4th and 5th, are called perfect intervals. From the earliest time of music, these were considered the purest intervals, which is why we call them perfect. So if you look in both F major and F minor here, between scale degree 1 and 4, it's a perfect 4th, and scale degree 1 and 5 is a 5th, and scale degree in between 1 and the octave is also perfect. And as you can see down here, same letter names in the minor key. Major intervals, 3rd, 6th, and 7th, built above the tonic of a major scale, are a half step larger than their corresponding minor intervals, 3rd, 6th, and 7th. And all these are above the tonic, okay? And then if you know it, and also between scale degree 1 and 2, in both major and minor, will always be a major second. So if you look at here, a major third is those 4 half steps, like we just talked about, and a minor third is the 3 half steps that we talked about. So you can invert intervals, and if you see here, we have between an F and a C. We still have an F and C, but it just switches, becomes a 4th. So a perfect 5th becomes a perfect 4th. Here we have a major third, sorry. And when we switch them or invert them, it becomes a minor 6th. Look at here, we have a minor second, so a half step converts to a major 7th. When intervals are inverted, perfect intervals remain perfect, major intervals invert to minor, minor intervals invert to major, and the two interval sizes always sum to 9. So 1 inverts to 8, 3 inverts to 6. Those both equal 8. All right, complete triad 3 and identify the intervals and then write the melodic intervals using the accidentals from their corresponding key. When finished, go on for the answers. So here it gives you the example first of a perfect 5th. Okay. So again, when identifying intervals, count the letter names. So we have A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have a 7th. And we have to figure out, is this a major or minor seventh? So we have a G here. So does a G go, is it naturalized according to if this was Do? Or is it a minor seventh? In this case, it's a major seventh. Here we have a whole step. That's a major second. Here we have a perfect fourth, A to D flat, A flat to D flat. Next one, we have a major sixth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If it was a minor sixth, this would be an F flat. Here we have a perfect unison, and this is a major third. All right, looking at our minor key, this would be a minor third, perfect fourth, minor seventh, minor sixth, major second, perfect fifth, perfect fifth, and a unison, perfect unison. All right, let's build a melodic interval now from E. So we have E to C sharp, which is a major six. So a fifth up from E is a B. A major seventh would be a D sharp. Perfect unison, E, that should be an easy one. Major third would be a G sharp. Perfect fourth would be an A. Major second would be an F sharp. So these are all the major seconds built on the scale degrees 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the major scale. So between C and D is a major second, D and E. So 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 5 and 6, 6 and 7. Those are all major seconds, or whole steps. Whole steps are also called major seconds. And then between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8, or 7 and 1, those are the half steps or minor seconds. So scale degree 1 to scale degree 3 is a major third. Scale degree 4 to scale degree 6 is a major third. Scale degree 5 to 7 is a major third. 2 to 4 is a minor. 3 to 5 is a minor. 6 to 1 or 8 is a minor third. And then scale degree 7 to scale degree 2, or 9 in this case maybe, is a minor third as well. Here are perfect fourths. So as you can see, we have a lot of perfect fourths in our major scale. 1 and 4 here, 2 and 5, 3 and 6, 5 and octave, 6 and 2, 7 and 3. And then we have this bad boy over here called the augmented fourth, and we're going to talk about that a little later. So, a major interval made up of one chromatic half step smaller becomes minor. A minor interval made up of one chromatic half step larger becomes major. Chromatic half steps don't change the letter name of either note. Perfect intervals can't be made major or minor. So how to write an interval? First, write the note heads for the correct interval size on the staff without accidentals. Okay, if you're looking at part A, or with matching accidentals, part B. Okay. If the quality of the interval is not correct, adjust by adding a flat, sharp, or natural to raise or lower the upper note. As you can see in example A, from C to E is a major third, but if you lower E a half step to E flat, it becomes a minor third. Also the same thing as a minor third. If you go from D to A, which is a minor third, then raising F to an F sharp, we have a major third. And then the last one there, the lower note of the interval can be adjusted as shown in part C. So a major third down, and then if you raise it, it becomes a minor third. So for that first example, E to C is a major third, E to C sharp is a minor third. So you just have to change the accidental depending on what size interval you're looking for. All right, go to try it 4 and complete that try it, and then move on, and I'll give you the answers on the next slide. So for try it 4, you're going to identify the size and quality of each second, third, or fourth, and then I would highly suggest you play these on the keyboard. Okay. All right, so here we have harmonic intervals. So remember, melodic are ones that are separated. It's like a melody. Harmonic are when you would play them or sing them at the same time. So our first example is an A sharp to a C sharp, which is a minor third, D to E, major second, B flat to E flat, perfect fourth, F to A, major third, C to F, perfect fourth, A flat to B flat, that's a major second, C sharp to F sharp, perfect fourth, G to C is a perfect fourth, and then D flat to F flat is a minor third. So we have E to G, minor third, B to C, minor second because this is a half step, C sharp to E sharp is a major third, G flat to C flat is a perfect fourth, F to A is a major third, E to F is a minor second because that's a half step, A flat to C flat is a minor third, D to G is a perfect fourth, D flat to E flat is a major second, and then E flat to A flat is a perfect fourth. So, altering the upper note of a white key interval. As you can see here, major third, minor third. So major third, this is a major third in the key of C. To change it to a minor third, you lower it to an E flat. If we have a minor third here, we want to make it a major third, we need to raise it. So here we have a major third, C sharp to E. To make it a minor third, you have to lower the upper note. We have a minor third, D flat to F flat. To make it a major third, you have to raise it using a natural to a major third. And then here, again, altering the lower note to do the same thing. So we have a major third between E and C. If we need to make a minor third, we need to raise it. Okay. So we have a minor third here, D, or F to D, sorry. To make it a major third, you need to lower it. So it's kind of the opposite of an ascending interval. If we were going from a major third to a minor third, we would have to lower the top note, but when you're descending, you have to raise it, and vice versa. The smaller intervals 2, 3, and 4 can help identify and spell their inversions 7, 6, and 5. For example, to identify the quality of a seventh, think of its inversion. If the inversion is a minor second, then the seventh is a major seventh. You can see this in example 6.12. and make sure you play and listen at least a bunch of times to this example. All right, now you're going to complete triad number 5, and in this one you're going to name the interval formed by each pair of pitches and then write the inversion. And then you're going to write harmonic intervals in part B. When you're done with doing the triad, please move on to the next slide. As you can see here, I gave you the answers. So a major third turns into a minor sixth, a minor seventh turns into a major second, perfect fifth becomes a perfect fourth, same here. Major sixth becomes a minor third, and if, like up here in number 1, if it was a major third, it would become a minor sixth. And then we have it again here, a minor third becomes a major sixth. All right, let's do some writing now. So we have a minor seventh. So let's think about our seventh. So a seventh would be B, okay? On that, just in a major scale, C to B is a major seventh, but we need to make it a minor seventh. So we need to make it a B flat. Okay, so number 3, I have an F. We got to make a major seventh. So F to E is our major seventh because that's the way it is naturally in the key of F. All right, a major sixth. So a sixth up from G sharp is an E, but that's a minor sixth, so we need to make it a major sixth. Perfect fifth above D flat would be A flat. A minor sixth above G, so a sixth above G is an E. Make it minor, gotta flatitize it. All right, major seventh in number 7 above a D. A seventh would be a C, but that's a minor seventh, so we need to make it a C sharp. So in the major seventh, you can always think of the top interval of being T. So if we're looking at pitch letter D, a half step down from D would be a C sharp. So a major seventh is that C sharp. All right, we have a perfect fifth above E. That's an augmented fourth, so we need to fix that. So we have a perfect fifth. Back in the treble clef, hooray, our favorite clef. So we have F sharp to E would be a seventh, but that is not a major seventh, so we need to add a sharp. Minor sixth, a sixth above A flat is F, but that's a major sixth, so we need to flatitize that. We need a minor seventh above G, so minor seventh above G, or seventh above G is F. That's all you have to write. Because remember when I talked about major and minor sevenths are a whole step away from this pitch. Major seventh, or a major seventh would be a half step away from this pitch. All right, a major sixth above C sharp. Here's a sixth, but that's a minor sixth. We need to make a major sixth. All right, a minor sixth, number 13. So sixth above F would be D. A minor six. Okay, major 7. D and C sharp. Perfect fifth. B flat. And a major 6. Up a 6 would be a C. And that's all we have to do for that. So you can also figure out an interval size by counting the scale steps from the first pitch to the second and counting the half steps or semitones between them. So you can see here in figure 6.1, there's no half steps in a unison, there's one half step in a minor second, 2, so on and so forth. So if you want to study this list, Cool? That'd be awesome. All right, on this slide, we are going to talk about augmented and diminished intervals. So, we are looking at Bach and his D minor invention here. And we're going to be talking about our diminished and augmented intervals. So we here have a diminished seventh. So because Bach wanted to avoid this augmented second here because we don't want to have augmented seconds in melodic lines. So to avoid that, he did a big skip here. Okay, so the inversion of an augmented second is a diminished seventh. If he would have wrote a C natural, it would have been a minor seventh. So let's think about it this way. So we have B flat, A, G, F, E, D, and C sharp. Okay. So this interval, so from here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So yes, it's an interval of a seventh. But if you think about it, you kind of have to think about it backwards. So if we went from C sharp here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, from C sharp to B flat, that is an interval of a diminished seventh. Okay, because remember, C sharp to C sharp would have been an octave. C sharp to C would have been a major seventh. C sharp to B is a minor seventh. C sharp to B flat, because you're lowering the minor seventh interval. So if he would have wrote in C natural, that would have been a minor seventh. But instead, he wrote a B flat, which is a lowered minor interval, which creates the diminished seventh. All right, now let's talk about the augmented fourth. So we have our augmented up fourth here. So we have from G to A, oops. Sorry about this. I am being foolish. I'm going to try that again because I can't write to save my life. So from G to A to B to C, 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be our perfect fourth. So, but if we raise our perfect fourth, it becomes augmented. So the augmented fourth happens a lot in major and minor diatonic music, and we'll be talking about that in chords and when we talk about voice leading as well. So a major or perfect interval is made one chromatic half step higher, becomes augmented. If a minor or perfect interval is made one chromatic half step smaller, it becomes diminished. If a diminished interval is inverted, it becomes augmented, and vice versa. Like I talked about in that last slide, Bach tried to avoid the augmented second. So instead of writing the C sharp like in a more contrary motion, he did the big jump of a diminished seventh from the B flat to the C sharp. So this is a little chart here, diminished 2, 3, 6, and 7. You have to make it one chromatic half step smaller. So for diminished, so we're talking about the diminished intervals, and then here are the augmented intervals. So you have to start with minor 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to make it diminished. You have to start with a perfect fourth, fifth, or eighth to make it diminished to lower one chromatic half step. Augmented, you have to start with the major second, major third, major sixth, major seventh, and then you make it one half step larger. That would make it an augmented. And then if you talk about unison 4, 5, 8, perfect, that's when you make them for the augmented unison 4th, 5th, and 8th. And like, I'll tell you this, diminished and augmented intervals don't happen very often, but the one that you will know and talk about a lot is that augmented 4th and that diminished 7th, because a lot of times composers use those two to avoid awkward musical situations. So something that, again, barely happens here, a doubly augmented chord, okay? That's when an interval is a major or perfect interval that is made a whole step larger without, again, this is big, without changing the letter names. A doubly diminished interval is when a minor or perfect interval is made a whole step smaller, and again, without changing letter names. A tritone, or augmented 4th, is something we'll talk about. It's an interval in the diatonic major scale that is neither major, minor, or perfect. This interval naturally occurs between scale degree 4 and 7, Fa and T, or if we think about the C major scale, between pitch letters F and B in the C major scale. And the diminished 5th is when you invert scale degree 4 and 7, okay? And where you put scale degree on the bottom and then scale degree 4 on the top. For example, if you go from T to Fa, or B to F in the C major scale. So resolving, you'll need to know this when we talk about chords coming up next chapter, but resolving augmented and diminished intervals. Augmented intervals, as you can see, resolve out. Diminished intervals go in. And we've talked about this before. If we think about this in the scale of C, B is T. T always wants to go to Do. Fa, or F here, Fa always wants to go to Mi. And the same thing here, Fa, Mi, Ti, Do. Those are, if you think about it in solfege, that's where they always want to go. And harmonically equivalent intervals are intervals that span the same amount of half steps but have different letter names, but they are enharmonically equivalent. For example, a minor third, F to A flat, has 3 semitones, but the augmented second, F to G sharp, which is, remember, G sharp and A flat are the same, is also is also the same amount of half steps. So you always have to think about context. Is it going to be a minor third or an augmented second? It depends on how it's spelled. So you have to remember, counting intervals is letter names. So F, so we talk about F to A, so we have F, G, A, that's 1, 2, 3, right? So, but if we think about the augmented 7, because we have to go F to G, that's 1, 2. So that's why they're spelled, they are enharmonically the same, but they are spelled differently. That's what gives them either the minor third or the augmented second sound. Another thing to think about, enharmonic intervals are similar to homonyms in language. Here and here sound the same, but have completely different meanings. Consonant and dissonant intervals. Intervals have characters, just like not all the dogs the same. They have their own characteristics. Intervals can sound consonant, right? Intervals can sound consonant, sounding pleasing to the ear, or something we call tonally stable. Right here, tonally stable. Okay, the consonant intervals are unison, third, fifth, sixth, and octave. Unison, fifth, and octave are the perfect consonants. Remember, we've talked about perfect fifth, unison, perfect unison, and octave because of how they sound. And thirds and sixths are imperfect consonances. Intervals also can sound dissonant, right? which sound jarring or clashy, or they need to move somewhere to find a resting point. So if we think about the intervals of a second and a seventh, and any augmented or diminished interval, example the tritone for example, these intervals are very dissonant, or remember I've talked about things being crunchy. So because remember, especially the minor second, it has that half step feel, and then the tritone has that very clashy sound, and it feels like it needs to go somewhere or resolve somewhere. And interestingly enough, the perfect fourth doesn't have a home because in this consonant or dissonant category, because some group it with the perfect, and then Renaissance composers treated the perfect fourth as a dissonance because of just how it worked out when you wrote it, and like how it would work with other parts around it. All right, so when you're looking at intervals in music with a key signature, you're always going to consider the key signature in anything that may appear. Okay, so if we look at this highlighted one right here, so D and E, so that's an interval second, but what kind of second? So this is actually, if you think about it, it's an E flat, okay? So D to E flat is a half step, right? So this would be a minor second. And if you look right here, we have C, D, E flat, 1, 2, 3, so it's a third of some sort. So remember, if we think about it in the key of C major, C, D, E is a major third, and then we lower that top note. This is a minor third. And then right here is a good example of a chromatic scale as well. Musical scores sometimes include courtesy accidentals that aren't entirely necessary. So if you look here in measure 203, so one thing you have to notice is always looking at the key signature, so we're in the key of E flat, okay? So here in measure 202, so you can see they had an A natural because the composer was going somewhere. Because the key signature, you didn't have to, they don't have to write this here, this A flat, but they wrote it here just so you didn't forget that there's an A flat in the key signature. So we call these courtesy accidentals. So hooray, you made it to the end of this chapter. Make sure you read the Did You Know at the end of chapter 6. It really gives you some cool insight into how perfect intervals work. As always, if you have any questions, see me. And please make sure you complete the triads, or the triads, because they'll help you out in practicing for learning what you need to know. All right, in the next chapter, we're going to be talking about triads, okay? We're actually going to start creating some music now and talking about music instead of just the basic elements of music, but all these elements are really super crucial into what we'll be going into next. Have a great day.